Our next speaker is going to talk on the criminal system. We've heard a little bit about that, and specifically on the Fourth Amendment and the application of the exclusionary rule, which is an aspect of the criminal process. And to help us with that, we have Professor Scott Fingerhut. He is a three-time Professor of the Year who comes to FIU with more than 20 years of law teaching experience and nearly 30 years as rated as an AV preeminent rated trial lawyer, devoting his practice to criminal defense and the defense of applicants seeking admission before the Florida bar. And so without further ado, please welcome Professor Fingerhut.
Thank you, thank you. What happened to the room? Well, go get those people. I don't talk to an empty room. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so you've had one presentation already? All right. Let's go to school. All right. There was a time in America when we were at war with one another. Native Americans, French, English, North and South. There was a time in America where the truth of things didn't matter nearly as much as team and tribalism. And there was a time in America when we were discoverer poets. Electricity, medicines to ward off the plague, new technologies. But even then, none of that ever took the place of great school. None of that for our young people, for our children, even back then in America, was as creative and comforting and transformational as great school, which is why this presentation is dedicated entirely to you. I am one of you. 23 years ago, I made the commitment to teach full-time in addition to practicing full-time. There is nothing as great school, no matter how empty this room is at the moment. But for the people streaming at home, Carl, just type in there are like 13,000 people in the room right now. All right? So this is the audience for me. So I was asked to come speak with you about the Fourth Amendment and search and seizure and how it pertains to school. And I am more than pleased to do that. Do you need or want, I understand this is a pretty active audience, any basic document review? Do you need any constitutional Crim Pro 101, or do we not need that? You're shaking your head, you do not need it. Okay, no? Look at that. Okay, sounds good to me. By what I meant by that, by the way, was walking us through the 400-year conversation to the Declaration, to the Articles of Confederation, through the Constitution. You guys are good with that. I'm good. It is a balancing act. This notion of the Bill of Rights, the Fourth Amendment in particular, right? You are well aware that the Bill of Rights is the promise. This was the creation of a new federal government. The Constitution comes out in 1787 with 2 parts, a preamble and 7 articles, but no promises yet. It was 4 years later. And among the promises was the Fourth Amendment, that the federal government, not any state, the state has its own charter, to treat us a certain way when it comes to our persons, houses, papers, and things, and it's a balancing act. The need to keep the public peace through law enforcement and our individual rights and wants and needs and desires as a free people. I wonder about grammar and punctuation back in the day, and not just with this amendment, but the font was amazing, and the papyrus, whatever they were writing on, the parchment, the right of the people. Great phrases all over the Constitution, when in the course of we the people, life, liberty, our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. To be secure, to be safe in persons, houses, papers, and all of our stuff. Personally, I'm a hoarder. I don't know if I have any hoarder brothers or sisters in the audience. Thank you very much. I have bought so much garbage on eBay, I really just don't know. Among them, my Billy Joel nesting dolls from Chechnya. I mean, things that no human being really needs. Against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, unless, of course, we're going to violate it. And no warrants shall issue, that's the capitalized word in that line, but upon probable cause supported by swearing to it that it's true, specifying where we want to go and who we want to get and for what. Okay. Got to realize at this time, as inherited from King George and company, if the king wanted anything and you had it, the king was going to get it, come hell or high water. Your house, your privacy, who cares? And if all the king's horses and all the king's men weren't plentiful enough because they were too busy in all of your houses, they would get all your neighbors on what was called a writ of assistance to go into your houses and take and tax and threaten, and you want to live, you want to love, you want to worship. So one of the promises of the new federal government was, nah, we don't want to live that way in America. That's not the comfort of this society. We are yearning to create for one another. Really makes George Washington a fascinating figure to study, you know? And of course, barely any money to make in politics. Our politicians were farmers and other types of businessmen. White landowning businessmen, but businessmen nonetheless. And they would spend most of their time farming and just go to wherever the capital was for 15 minutes to do their politicking, because the capital kept trying to have to flee to find a safe place and not get shot up or burned down. And they said, George, you were great in this war. Come take over. You can call yourself anything you want. And obviously he chose president. Anybody know what that word, the derivation of it, what it actually means? President. It's to preside as if over a grand meeting. It's the chairwoman of a meeting. There was a time in America. So, basic understanding of the Fourth Amendment. You want to play real school, or you just want me to tell you? Tell us, really? Okay, you guys have had it? Is the bar open out there yet, or no, it's just bacon and eggs? What was the, okay, let me ask you this. All right, what types of searches and seizures pursuant to the Constitution, that's Jenny Dormany, by the way, she runs the show, if you don't know her, do we like or not like? You can express it either way. Easy question, because we've got 4 questions we need to ask ourselves to walk our way through a Fourth Amendment analysis. What type of searches and seizures do we like? Reasonable ones, there we go. It prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures. None of this is defined, though. God forbid, why would we do that? That really, though, whether a search and seizure is reasonable is the third question. All right? Remember, some people can do the math, some people can explain the math. The superstars can do both. So we have three other questions. What must the second question necessarily be if we're just leaping to the conclusion that searches and seizures must be reasonable? Hold it. Too many people, too many excited people speaking at once. Who said something from over here? Yes. Okay, we certainly need to do that, but that's going to be a question embedded in that third question.
Define search.
Okay, define search. Well, what would it matter whether a search and seizure is reasonable if what? Okay. If there's no search or seizure at all, this is not Webster's dictionary definition of search and seizure. This is lawyer talk. What a legal search means, what a legal seizure means. And if you don't have either one of those, who cares whether it was reasonable? Always 2 points of departure about reasonableness: at the beginning, at the inception, and then how did things go from there? Did we go overboard in our searching and seizing? Any of that could make it unreasonable, but we need to figure out whether there's a search or seizure at all. We'll come back to that in a moment. Obviously, if a search or seizure is unreasonable, we've got to figure out what to do about it, the remedy. That's question 4. Number 1. Who's been to a movie lately? Anybody see anything? What'd you see, sir? Avatar. Like, is there a new Avatar? Oh, excuse me. The whole freaking room has seen this movie. Listen, I go home every day, I watch Everybody Loves Raymond and The West Wing. That's right, I go to sleep and that's the end of the day. Okay, who'd you go with?
First time I went with my wife, second time.
You saw this movie twice? All right, I don't think I want to take your wife down this road. Who did you go with the second time?
That was my friend.
Your friend, okay, good, an anonymous friend. All right, your friend has a huge crack problem. We can't get him off the pipe. Okay, and there's applaud for that for some reasons. I don't understand why. Okay, and you've had it. You've tried to do everything to help this friend. And even during Avatar, as you're trying to explain it to him, because it's the second time you have sat through this movie, you know he goes off into the bathroom and he's not getting junior mints. He's going to light up the pipe and come back. Walking out of the movie, you see 2 off-duty police officers. You're up to here. So you reach your hand in his pocket. You take out his crack rocks and his crack pipe, and you wave it to the officers. You go, here, look at this. You got to take this guy in. You got to arrest this guy. Get him some kind of help, right? Because we just arrest people to help them. We don't have infinite hospitals to help the mentally ill and infinite lockdown treatment. You know, you're probably all familiar with the Baker Act and the Marchman Act under Florida law, involuntary 3-day hospitalizations to save people from themselves. You know, there was a time in America, but it wasn't the easiest place to live in then either, I would imagine. Any of you ever watched that show Colonial House on PBS? They outfitted this house from the, I forget if it was the 1700s or the 1800s. And the husband and wife, you had to dress that way, live in the house. They had one store they set up where you shopped for all the things that were available then, and they did the things that people did 300 years ago. The kids were allowed to go to school and dress more normally so they didn't get the living bejesus kicked out of them. But then they had to change back into colonial clothes and help with the parents. That was a tough life. Especially the less privilege you had, the less money you had, the more womanly you were. You know what? They took the kids out of school 3 to 4 days a week. Every week, the mom did to help her do at home? At a school. Laundry. Laundry. Yeah. Okay, your friend gets arrested. I don't know who you're going to take to the third showing, but gets lawyers, goes to court, says, "Judge, you can't use under Q4 this crack against me because I didn't give permission to my friend to shove his hand in my pocket. The search and seizure is unreasonable. The only way to deter friends from doing this kind of thing is to discount their goods." Right? Is he going to win that motion in court or lose it? Hold on. He's got it. Go. Number one, government action. That's right. What he's got is depending how he looks at it, he's got a friend problem. He doesn't have a Fourth Amendment problem.
Thanks.
Government action, was there a search and seizure? Is the search and seizure reasonable and the remedy? Now, some of you asked, how do we define searches? How do we define seizures? Seizures are a little easier to conceptualize. We have seizures of people and their stuff. Property interests are implicated, liberty interests are implicated. Searches are a little more, we're still working with the main tests from 50 years ago. Searches used to be based on property. Did you trespass on someone's property? But beginning about 50 years ago, now we look at it in terms of reasonable expectations of privacy. Reasonable expectations of privacy. This was before the portable phone, the cell phone, and Al Gore's interweb. And when we talk about reasonable expectations of privacy, we're talking about looking at it from two perspectives. Subjectively and objectively. Did the student have a subjective expectation of privacy in the area invaded by government? And you may be asking yourselves, am I government? Well, as a school official, you are a representative of the state. The notion of in loco parentis, that's not really Fourth Amendment-y anymore. That said, depends on the court you're in. Are you school law enforcement? Is regular law enforcement at the school? Are you a teacher proper? Are we going to treat the teachers like law enforcement and hold them to the criminal adult standard? Or are we going to respect the school standard and hold them to what that is, which is coming up? Subjectively. And then even if the searched or seized person or owner of the things feels aggrieved, they had a reasonable expectation of privacy, we have to consider it objectively too, because cases aren't just about for the parties at the bar. Is it good for society generally, objectively? Would the average reasonable person, is it good for the court to say privacy there, in a school locker, on the bus, in a backpack, the comfort of a society? Famous case from the court called Katz. It was about gambling on a public payphone. Many of you remember payphones, but I imagine there are some very obnoxious younger teachers in the room. If you were on the road and you had to make a phone call, you actually had to exit your vehicle, go to where Superman used to change, take out something called a quarter, try and close the door, it was broken. Try and get the fan to go, it was broken. Look up who you wanted to call in the white pages or the yellow pages, okay? And the government said, listen, you don't even need Q3 for us. We didn't search and we didn't seize. We didn't enter the phone booth. We have this great new 1960s technology. We just eavesdropped from outside the phone booth. Like there's a satellite looping Mars right now, listening to every one of us. And we didn't take anything. These are words, they're in the air. That's not taking someone's stuff. And they had eavesdropping in 1791. If they wanted to put that in the Bill of Rights, they could. And that's always the problem of making a list of things, right? Just ask your union rep. If it ain't in there, subjective and objective. And the court transformatively said, okay, search and seizure is no longer about property, it's about privacy. A word, by the way, you did not see when we had the Fourth Amendment slide up. Privacy ain't in there. But do you want it in there? Should it be in there? The comfort of this world for you? How do you not interpret it? A lot of changes in the world since that case came out that the courts are dealing with, that you are dealing with. Increase in tension, violence, armaments, drugs, attention span. The attention span of the average person in America was 12 seconds in 2000, right? It's 7 seconds now, and I'm told the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. Okay. You're dealing with a lot. Over the years, the lawyers have created many exceptions to needing to have a warrant. The only thing that's mentioned in the Fourth Amendment, but even in 1791, they had warrantless law enforcement. Remember, there was only one court that came out at the beginning in Article 3, right? The Supreme Court. There were no appellate courts. There were no district courts. There were no magistrate judges, as you just heard. Article 6, the Constitution is the highest law of the land. You put 3 and 6 together, your Chief Justice John Marshall in Marbury versus Madison, the concept of judicial review. That if there's a tie in the two branches, someone's got to break it. You don't like it? New executive order from the executive branch. You don't like it, legislature? Write a new law. If it comes to us, we'll deal with it. But even back in 1791, when the constable came over and said, okay, clearly you just robbed someone. I need you to stay here. I'm going to get on my horse. I'm going 4 counties over. That's the judge who's on duty. They're going to sign it. I'm going to come back with the warrant and arrest you. See you in 6 weeks. So if things can move around or be dangerous or they're consented to, exigent circumstance, if there are emergencies, pressing conditions, if we're chasing someone, if you leave it out in the middle of everywhere so its criminality can be plain to see, if you're arrested in your immediate area just so you don't shove anything away to not be charged with it or take something out and hurt yourself or law enforcement, tons of reasons you don't have to have a warrant. And Q4. It ain't easy to get Q4. Constitutionally, generally, in American courts in particular. In 1960, there were 200,000 people in prison in America. There are over 2 million people in prison in America today. We incarcerate more people because of our thirst for, appetite for money in the industrial prison complex than any other society, name the worst, combined over the course of history. Hitler, Mussolini, apartheid, you name it. In terms of how we incarcerate people, those are New England clam bakes compared to what we do. 1 in 7 in America, 1 in 7 of your children one day are going to be under the auspices of the criminal justice system in some way. So there are all these complicated reasons why, even though the rules were broken, free pass. Pass. And then there are the special rules. Special rules for airports, borders, inventories, open fields, less reasonable expectation of privacy if you're already on probation or parole. Suspicionless searches, you've been through those, been to a roadblock? Do random drug testing in your school? Everyone gets sort of searched and seized a little bit, no individualized suspicion. We do those. And of course, schools, which is why we're here. School rules. And then if you want, I'll give you a couple scenarios and you could tell me probably good search or seizure or bad. All right? We'll play the game. First of all, you don't need a warrant in school. It's always safer to have one, but, and listen, you know, I'm dealing with law students all day, and there are moments of challenge. God love you people. You know? It is an underappreciated, underpaid, underthanked job that is one of the few jobs that gives this country an ounce of hope. Don't need a warrant. To maintain safety in school, to preserve order in school, in class, on school grounds, safe to learn, safe for you to work. So you think, okay, well, it's going to be a typical warrantless kind of search and seizure. At least we're going to require probable cause. That's in the Fourth Amendment, based on an officer's training and expertise. The rule used to be, by the way, more likely than not, the civil burden of proof. An offense was about to be committed, was committed, or was just committed. That's not what probable cause is anymore, according to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's reasonable basis, which doesn't necessarily have to be 51%. But it's not even that. Interesting, right? Reasonable suspicion, which is not in the Constitution either, by the way. Terry versus Ohio brought that into the scope of American criminal procedure. Officer McFadden is scoping out 3 guys. Are they window shopping? Are they looking at a pair of Jordans, you know, just walking back and forth in front of the store window? Or are they casing the place to bust in? Who knows? McFadden doesn't want to take a chance. So he stops them and he questions them, and their answers were horrific. So it leads to a little mini search and seizure because you only have mini facts. You don't have probable cause yet. A mini pat down. Oh, weapons, arrest, prosecution. Law enforcement said, we can do whatever we want. The Constitution doesn't apply, it only talks about probable cause. The defenders said, what are you talking about? Now, everyone is going to get searched and seized. We need some protection here. This cannot count because the Constitution requires probable cause. And the battle lines were drawn. And the court said, you know what, we're going to invent something new. Reasonable suspicion. Lesser quantum of facts, lesser authority to search and seize. Reasonable suspicion. A moderate chance. Common sense, non-technical, average, everyday, non-legalese way to do things. And that's where most people in America get sucked in. That's what's talked about at the dinner table. Listen to what happened to me today. Most people don't go for the full ride into the criminal justice system, but that's the contact that was made. And that has a ripple effect, right? These aren't good contacts. Most people we prosecute and that I've ever represented normally do not say, officer, thank you for getting me into custody. Who cares about some of my rights? Listen, I was in a death spiral and you saved my butt. Thank you. It happens, but not a lot. interesting, states can be laboratories and give their citizens more rights under its version of its Constitution than the US Supreme Court says Americans get under the federal Constitution. The US Supreme Court sets the floor in that sense. States can be laboratories and give more rights. It's been 50 years since Florida voters voted in one of the two conformity clauses of the Florida Constitution. One is about the death penalty, that if the US Supreme Court ever says we're not going to kill people anymore in terms of punishment, no matter how retributive life is, once we get rid of the death penalty, every one sentence gets commuted to life, and that'll happen to everybody in Florida. And that'll happen. It's not going to happen in any of our lifetimes, but we will grow past the wisdom of killing people. Even though any of us maybe, you mess with the wrong people, any of us might say, you know what, let's kill that guy. But that's not what a humane people do. But let's have the talk about it without calling each other frickin' jerks, without trying to firebomb one another's houses, without threatening them so easily, you know? Your kids, my students, they think it's so private. I miss you so much. There's nothing private about this. Zero. In 1968, Florida voters said, you know what? Florida courts are not allowed to experiment with the Fourth Amendment. Whatever the US Supreme Court says goes, goes. No experimentation. Let's just make it easier. The police can get confused too easily. Really? That's the Fourth Amendment conformity clause. So you don't need a warrant, and you don't need probable cause. Reasonable suspicion, justified at the beginning. Okay? And it has to be reasonably related in scope. You can't do more searching and seizing than the amount of suspicion you have. Who decides that? Who the hell knows? That's what lawyers in courts do every day. You're expected to do that on the fly with your supervisors? Best of luck. It ain't easy. Especially if it hasn't happened before. So many things we could talk about, man. I can tell you, we did the air raid drills when I was in school. But one of the benefits of living in my America growing up, where your parents kicked you out the door in the morning and said, go play, go experiment, go survive in the wilderness, and come back at the end of the day, we'll have dinner and you're safe. That's how I was brought up to deal with society. Instead of helicoptering the child to death and then send them off as an adult to deal with civilization, never having survived in the wilderness. Great Britain is taking a measure at that. They got sick and tired of their playgrounds being places where no kid could hurt themselves. They had taken away all the sharp metal and the hanging places you could fall from, said our kids aren't growing up tough enough, very Churchillian of what's going on here. And they said, you know what, bring all that crap back. If we get sued, we get sued. It's my understanding that, and is this true, are you not allowed to hit kids anymore? Listen, I was a thrower 15, 20 years ago in law school. I threw a lot of stuff. And then I was told I shouldn't throw things anymore. One day, a Duncan Munchkin stuck to a student's eyeglass, like right there. And I said, all right, I better stop throwing stuff, But I was 40-something, who cared? But now, I'll be 60 this year, no student is worth my health insurance. Can I have a clap for that? Can I have a clap? Thank you very much. 15 pills a day, peeing 20 times a night, believe me, I ain't giving up that state of Florida health insurance. Reasonably related in scope. You can't abuse the leniency of not needing a warrant and only needing reasonable suspicion. And you can't go overboard. It can't be excessively intrusive. You've got to take into account age, gender, privacy rights, all the balancing act of things. Okay, you want some examples? Okay, let's see here. Let's play reasonable suspicion. All right. A drug counselor at school sees indicia of impairment in a student. Wants to do some searching and potential seizing. Reasonable suspicion? Anybody say no? You say no? How come? Well, let's make it up. Bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, lethargy.
Maybe I'm having a heart attack, who knows?
Maybe. Okay. Let me give you two key criminal justice words. Probable, reasonable.
So everybody that has bloodshot eyes can get searched for drugs?
Could be something else, right? How are we supposed to know? And who's getting sued when we do nothing? Listen, blame it on the lawyers, but an officer gives someone a break and lets someone finish the drive home and doesn't bust them, and they run into a tree and kill themselves. The officer's getting disciplined, the lawyers are going to sue, and of course the ripple effect is the center doesn't hold. The next time the officer comes across someone and they could get a break, no break for you. My mother taught me long ago, all human things are motivated by two things and two things only, love and fear. The better teacher I have become in the last 30 years, when you lose the insecurity, the fear of every 20, 30, 40-year-old person running and gunning and building up their lives goes through. Of course, if every 25-year-old could act like they were 60, it would be a different world, but can't be hypocritical about it either. When I was a young teacher, I wanted to be liked as much as respected, and that's a bad road for a teacher. And to be almost 60 now and not give two craps if any student likes me, oh, thank you, Jesus. But you're going to respect one another and the material, even if you're faking it. That's a yes, by the way, on that drug counselor. You see students huddling together, one has money in one hand and the other has their hand in their pocket. Enough reasonable suspicion to justify a Fourth Amendment search, an intrusion on their reasonable expectation of privacy, not only subjectively for those kids, but one that society, through the court, is willing to objectively recognize as reasonable. Okay. Supreme Court said no on that one, right? So it's all in the articulation, right? And we got to tell one another, to be honest, you know. Dr. House's number one rule is what? Everybody lies. It includes us. I have plenty of law enforcement as my students. I just say, listen, I understand you need to get home at the end of the day. I get it. To your families. All right? And when my house gets broken into and it's dark, I'm not the one with shotguns cocked go running up my staircase. I get it. All I ask of you is put the real stuff on your report, even if it means you're going to lose. That's all I can ask. I'm not going to teach them, go die for me. Number 3, odor of marijuana. That's it. What does that mean anymore, though? THC, separatable. I hear there's marijuana in my shampoo up in the room, you know? It says relâché. I don't know what the hell's going on.
massage me.
I'm feeling a little woozy in the shower. I don't know what's happening. There's the euphoric part. There's the non-part. The smeller can't tell the difference. Can you tell law enforcement, listen, it might be the real stuff, but since it could maybe be the separated shampoo stuff, no search for you. And American courts are not willing to tell law enforcement that. You've got to trust the player in the room. And that's why.
You said no?
Yes.
Is it at a school? Is it yes?
Its odor is yes, but it could turn out to be nothing. Are we willing, as a society, to tell police you can't do that? And the answer so far is no. How many issues do you have with you, your colleagues? You'd like a little more of this, a little more refinement, a little more qualification, a little more relaxation, compensation. Will it happen? Won't it happen? Will the business go on? I remember being a summer camp counselor. Best times of my life. Get paid $600 a summer, so I don't, in upstate New York, so I don't have to work at the deli in Syosset. And you go to the camp owner, listen, could you just pay me $40 more for the summer? That's what my parents told me to ask for. Pay me $640 instead of $600. No one is more loyal than I am. And the answer invariably was no, because there were 50 of me waiting to go to work for $600. It's the answer to 99 questions out of 100 anyone will ever ask us, and that's money. You may have to play 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon to get back there a bit, but it's money.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's not with this, but it is with this. A few years ago, there was that case in California where that couple went to a baby shower, and they killed everybody in the baby shower. The only thing they could find after the case was the Apple phone. And there was a huge debate about privacy in that iPhone because the courts wanted to break into the phone to get the communication that they alleged happened between the terrorists and...
We're not on a school, though, right? We're at a private house?
On a school, yeah, this was private. But we had this discussion in my classroom.
It's always a challenge to get into someone's phone. These are our whole lives. Okay, I won't ask to see, but how many of you have at least one picture on your phone you don't want to put up on the board right now? And that's all of us. Okay? These are our whole lives now. Searching and seizing them is a much more complex thing. Absent consent from a child, and whether a child can consent and under what circumstances you secured consent, will probably be litigated. So cross your T's and dot your I's, and obviously, the more the sky is falling, which none of us wants, the more leeway you're going to get without a warrant and with only reasonable suspicion. It's a fact of life. 16 minutes, my Lord. Next one. A dog sniff. Drug dog comes in, it's officer dog day, and they sniff, and you've been hoping they nail this one kid, but you never got anything on him. And the dog hits on the kid in the back of the room. Kid's just sitting there. Good search and seizure or no? Okay, $5,000 for the right answer, and I'm not really going to pay you $5,000. Back of the room. Hold on, microphone coming. Let's get this on tape, Carl.
I thought on campuses, drug dogs have to have specific areas of searches, like a specific classroom.
It's the kid's crotch. That's where the stuff is.
So I guess I'm wrong.
Which cue? Is it a reasonable search and seizure? You're saying yes?
I'm saying no because it's not.
You're saying no?
I'm saying no.
Okay, you're going to write the dissenting opinion on that one. Anybody have the answer? Yes. It's good. Okay, tell me why.
I believe it's yes, and we had this happen at the high school I worked at. The drug dogs came in, they sniffed lockers.
Why is it good?
Well, because they had a suspicion that it was there, and the dogs went to the lockers.
They had a suspicion it's there.
Well, that there was pot at school, and drugs at school, and they went to the lockers, and then they went to the kids of
Okay.
those lockers. So
Well,
they had,
once you would find it on a kid, that's a green light to go to the locker and the car and backpack or
they
anything
actually
else.
did it the reverse way. But
There was no suspicion for this kid. Tell me why it's reasonable under the Fourth Amendment. Right there. Give her the mic.
Is this like your Avatar example because there was no government action? I mean,
It clearly
you
is
said it was
government
like
action.
bring
It's
your
a
dog.
police officer with their dog.
But you said it was like the dog's coming to do a presentation and the dog happens to alert to the
Hey,
drugs.
well, you know what? That's just, as we say growing up in Wisconsin, which I didn't really, that's just hard cheese for that kid.
Okay.
All right. Okay, one more try. Who do you trust to take it?
oh, there's someone over there.
Okay, I don't know if you trust that gentleman, but apparently he's taken
You
it.
shouldn't trust me, I assure you.
First of all, have you seen Avatar?
No.
I don't know if we can hear from you. Is that all right that we hear from you?
No.
All right? Go.
I'm going to go with because the dog's a cop.
But, okay, let's speak in Fourth Amendment language. Let's
Because
be
the-
graceful about this.
Because the dog is an authorized government agent.
So it was what, a reasonable search?
So it's a reasonable search.
Okay. This is not a Q3 question, it's a Q2 question. Because what reasonable expectation of privacy do you have on the aroma of marijuana wafting from your pants? And the answer is none. It's not even a search under the Fourth Amendment. So as long as you don't bite the guy's privates off to get the stuff, you're justified at the inception, you don't go overboard on how you execute, you're reasonable. 13 minutes, Carl? Hate that clock. An anonymous phone call says that one of your students is going to bring drugs to school, and the kid has a reputation as a drug dealer. Yes or no? And without that reputation part, the Supreme Court has said you need more information about the anonymity. Have they ever called before? How reliable have they been? Or if they've never called before, what's their expressed basis of knowledge? How do they know? Random call, never heard from them before, no details, no good.
Without the reputation, and let's say it's a gun. If the student says another student is going to
Okay,
bring
ready?
a gun.
This is for you. 2 students report another student has a gun.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's a yes. You know, because it's a gun. But 40 years ago, 2 students report a kid has marijuana. Holy crap, we got to do something about that. America is about who we are and what we want. Who we are and what we want as a people. Small p, capital P. And you guys are on the front lines as much as any other warrior poet. Without the reputation, no good. With the reputation, it's all you need is barely enough. You know?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So
Good.
question. When the school is conducting searches, a child has a hit list. He says he's going to either blow up the school, shoot up the kids, or whatever. The process is basically we have to find out if he has some materials to do so, and they search the home. Is that reasonable or unreasonable?
The best policies,
Based on bullying.
the best policies that protect you, your students, their home lives, are policies made in communal conjunction. That everybody gets together, talks about their concerns, we know our legal parameters, and we figure out, for us anyway, until it gets to the court, maybe we won't know for sure, legally speaking, but we're going to figure out what does reasonable suspicion, given the context, mean to us. And since we can hardly talk about anything at any meeting, right? You know, and we are giving deference, you know, we're a democratic republic, and elections have consequences, and there are school boards and everything. What I like to say in school is not everything in life is about criminal justice. But in criminal justice, everything is about everything, including the policies. Like, you want to play sports, you have to consent to this. If you violate, do you get arrested? No. That's being flexible. You get suspended from the team or suspended longer. Courts love that flexibility to make it reasonable under Q3. You played that game pretty well. Who we are and what we want. This was America in recent past, but not anymore. Now it's just say it, which sort of turns the swoosh on its head a little bit. Obviously, when it comes to criminal law and procedure, but everyone who's talking to you today, we're all working through the same world. We're all just trying to make it to the end of the week and try and leave for the generations to come a little generational wealth, a little clothing, some better medicine. David Remnick of The New Yorker said, this notion of lies and lying and not caring and not holding people accountable is tearing apart tradition like a troop of apes let loose in the Louvre. Paris was my mother's favorite place, by the way. I thought I would give that plug. People believe they know way more than they actually do. These phones make us geniuses. You're a genius. And to me, it's always been a little like, if you stop smoking, do you live longer, or does it just feel like it? This isn't personal, by the way. This is the business of your lives. You're there trying to help someone, and they can't help but lie to your face. That ain't about you. It's about them. Does it make it easier to swallow? I can't promise you that. But it explains why people would rather see a reassuring lie. That's the movie they go to see. Not an inconvenient truth. Click for me. Amazing things that happen internally when a lie hits your brain. We could speak for 4 hours. So I have a separate presentation on that one. Maybe next year invite me back to talk about that. The cognitive looping and the double down. The red lies and the white lies and the blue lies and the tribalism of it all. Who cares if they deflated the football? It's Tom, it's my team, let's go. Let's go. Roger Ailes was a pig about a lot of things. But this thing he got right and built an empire. People don't really want to work that hard to be informed. They want to feel informed. It's a quantitative and qualitative difference in that makes all the difference in the world. You know it. No one knows their subjects better than you. It's better than hearing it and seeing it and reading it and experiencing it. You teach it, that's 90% retention rate. It's nothing like great school. Even Merriam-Webster, okay, this is the apocalypse, trigger warning. Fraying at the edges, giving it up. If you look it up right now, trigger, okay. Listen, some of you may have a stroke, so you go to Webster's dictionary right now. The alternative definition of literally is figuratively. The word means its opposite. This is the horseman in the rain of fire. I don't know if you're familiar with those. And when called on it, Webster said, listen, we don't define words, we just report on their usage. That's not what I count on Webster's to do. There was a time in America. When the New York Times comes out with that in February of 17, our heads should explode. We needed to be told that. And that's pretty expensive real estate for them to put up there in Manhattan. Really? I had to be told that? And you're dealing with the newest generations of all of this over and over and over again. This is President Obama. It's a huge challenge. We don't have a common agreement on baselines of facts anymore. Not opinions, facts. Senator Moynihan in his day was very famous for saying, listen, pal, you're more than entitled to have your own opinion. You don't get to have your own facts. And who's being held accountable for what? I mean, it took the tapes for Nixon to come around when they went to him and said, hey, Dick, time to go. And at least he listened. But that's the pendulum swing in America. Those two crises, the cautionary tales, Vietnam and Watergate, the government losing faith in their people because the people then lost faith in their government. It's been the death of the rehabilitative ideal and any form of mercy or second chance in this country for 60 years. Oh, here's my goldfish slide. And again, I don't know if that's true, but when you find a little image of a goldfish like that, you got to put it in your PowerPoint. What do you see about that audience? That's the lovely Selena Gomez. Those are pretty good seats in the front. No one is in the moment. They're all recording the moment, and we have to stop saying, ew, you're growing up in a bad way. That's the way people are growing up. I remember my first concert, 13 years old, May 25th, 1976, third row, Madison Square Garden. Paul McCartney and Wings. I can tell you how the garden smelled. I can tell you the stickiness of the beer on the floor. There was a time in America. It's a great Korean word, Han. So much sadness, even tears cannot come, but still there is hope. It's more of a state of being than a word that's easily defined. And yes, you would. 3 minutes, right? I'm good? That's what you do every day, in different forms. And everyone in this room, and every one of your students, and me, and all the trial lawyers of the trial lawyer section, and every student competing right now next door, including mine, are on this planet to be validated, to be seen, to be heard, and to know that they matter. That's universal in our constitutional DNA. We know that character is the only secure foundation of the state, and you try getting Calvin Coolidge into your next PowerPoint presentation. That is not easy to do. But this one is easier. It's easy to be more reflective now, you know, in the winter. Justice is what love looks like in public. You get this message across when you're running and gunning, when you're building your reputation, then you're a real superstar. So, may I just ask, for me, if you do this, stop apologizing. There's no such thing as too smart. There's nothing you can do that won't make me not proud of you. There is no shame in your expertise. Tom Nichols at the Naval War College calls it the death of expertise, studying the Dunning-Kruger effect and the dumbing down of America. And unless we start being truthful with one another, we are going to get stupider and less productive every single day. And it's this room that gives us a fighting chance. The buy-in is not to let yourself be treated as a target, because generally speaking in this country and in this state, you are. You are not the target, you are the arrow. It's a fundamental buy-in. It's binary, you're either in or out. And if you ever feel a little hopeless, this isn't for you, just take out a $1 bill. Turn it over. This is the reverse of the Great Seal, the pyramid, 13 levels for the 13 original colonies and states. Above it, God's watchful eye, a little Illuminati for you. And the words, annuit coeptis, he, God, it favors our undertaking as a new nation. The pyramid is unfinished. because the country is unfinished. The idea of America is unfinished, and that, constitutionally, is how you work to form a more perfect union. You read books, you make assignments, you red pen students things, you deal with their ups and downs. I see it flashing. I'm wrapping up. Okay?
Thank you, Professor. I hope everybody's enjoyed that. A wonderful presentation.
Good to see you.